Hi Joshua, thank you. Thank you for jumping on the call. Really appreciate you being here.
It's my pleasure.
Joshua, when you entered you filled out the survey that I had for the future of the Scrum Master. You were one of the few folks who selected the option that the Scrum Master should also do technical tasks.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it's a sizable minority, I would say, but there are few people who are thinking in those lines. Have you seen that in action on your teams, and how has it worked?
Yes, I have. I actually, I think it works better, honestly.
Hmm.
So I don't necessarily think that a Scrum Master needs to be the lead developer. I think that's overloading.
Hmm.
But a Scrum Master who doesn't understand the technical, who can't help make architectural decisions, who can't be part of those discussions,
Hmm.
then is just like any other manager in a lot of ways, and they're ignored.
Yeah.
Um, and so, in the same way that the best project managers in a traditional um, development have technical knowledge, I think the Scrum Master needs to have that ability to to do a code review occasionally, to sit down and actually understand what's going on in the code instead of just being a person who I'm going to observe the team and I'm going to make sure that they're doing the things that the
Yeah.
and meeting all the boxes and I'll facilitate this retrospective and I think that those skills are very important.
Hmm.
So I don't necessarily think the technical skill is the most important. On the other hand, I think it is better for a scrum master to have those skills, at least a base understanding of those skills.
So on the team that you said you had a Scrum Master who was technical. How did that come to be? How did they select these? Did it evolve into that role? How did that happen?
So um, so I'm trying to think of a I can't necessarily think of an easy answer for that
Okay.
because um, so not necessarily in the role that I'm in right now, although the role I'm in right now is a reasonable one, where I kind of fill the Scrum Master role. I'm also the
Hmm.
chief engineer. We just hired a lead developer. We
Hmm.
have a data scientist. But I mean, in initially out of college, etc., I did development,
Okay.
and yes, I haven't done like Java code that goes into production, but I did development for 9 years or so
Okay.
on another in another language,
Okay.
and so I have the understanding, and I know enough Java that I can look at it, I can understand it.
Hmm.
So in that way, it's part of my background, part of my history. Immediately before this, I was a division chief at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services,
Yeah, I saw that.
and so I was overseeing a lot of Scrum teams. And so the way in which they would evolve that way there was a lot of variation on that.
Hmm.
But one of the things from the government side that we would not quite require but strongly encourage was those scrum masters who had the technical skills,
Hmm.
who could do more than just facilitate and help, and help do the things that a PM used to be. So it's not just a PM by another name; it's actually delivering value in different ways. Um, so for me, it was a lot more of encouraging the contractors to bring in scrum masters who had that,
Hmm.
as opposed to organically growing um, those people into the scrum master. Generally, it tended to be a developer who wanted to expand, or even sometimes the test, like someone who's predominantly like a test automation
Hmm.
specialist.
Yeah.
They've got some of those technical
Correct.
skills, but they want to do something slightly different,
Right.
and those people expanding into the Scrum Master role.
Oh, that's cool. And that worked well for the teams.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found that the teams that had a reasonably technical Scrum Master performed better than the teams that did not.
Now that you are in a startup kind of mode, very different from federal government.
Very different, yes.
Do you also are you also doing solution design and architecture, and are you
Yeah.
sort of in that mode now?
Yes, we are very close to launch
Okay.
of our site. In the startup, it's called Whitehawk. We're developing a cybersecurity exchange, and as part of that, doing some big data analysis, and doing natural language processing, and doing crawling and scraping of web so that we can determine what cybersecurity solutions best match into a particular company. So there's definitely a lot of business architecture, and then how does technical architecture fit in there, and which pieces do we want, given that we need something where we can regularly do posting of articles and blogs and other things. We need, some kind of content management, but we also have a heavy technical back end with lots of processing to it. So balancing the different, so there's definitely a lot of that architecture in addition to the Java work and the work in NoSQL and other databases and working with Watson and other kinds of things that are fun. So, yeah.
So, startup is a whole different environment.
Yes.
Fast moving, experiment, quick, fast. And in the federal government now, you're talking about, I read you work in governance too.
Yes.
How did that work for the Agile projects? What kind of governance did you have?
So we changed federal governance at CIS, which I was a large part of, honestly. The division that I oversaw was the Applied Technology Division, which, in a traditional sense, I had within my division enterprise architecture, quality assurance, independent tests. I had all the Agile coaches in my division, as well as all of our software procurement was also in my division. And configuration control release management.
Oh,
so that is governance. I mean, that is the essence of governance. That set of things.
Yeah.
But among the things that we did, we embedded most of our governance.
Okay.
So governance wasn't about, hey, come tell me when you're done. It was about, the QA person was at the daily stand-up. The enterprise architecture person was at the daily stand-up, was involved with the team, was having other meetings, other discussions with them when they're like, oh, hey, should we do A or B? The enterprise architect would come and just have a discussion with them while they were making that decision, rather than going and dictating from on high, or hey, you must follow this and that. The enterprise architecture group was a large part of developing our first microservice, which wasn't look at what a microservice is. Instead, it was a working microservice that went into production.
Okay.
But it was also the example, and then the format that people were used to follow after.
Did you struggle with architecture groups? Did you struggle with the architecture groups in terms of having them adopt Agile?
I definitely did some training for the architecture, for quality assurance, for all of those groups. Yeah. The other way that we changed oversight in general was we timeboxed it. Rather than having oversight happen when you hit certain milestones, we did an oversight meeting, because all of our oversight's embedded. So we did that meeting on a 6-month cadence.
Okay.
Every 6 months, you had, we called it RPR, Release Planning Review, and our Release Readiness Review, which weren't really accurate because we were releasing on a very short cadence. Our one of our largest programs, actually our largest program, was releasing up to 4 times a week to production.
Wow.
Which in the federal government isn't too bad.
Wow.
So, but we changed over to a timebox cadence for the formal review of programs, rather than come tell me when you're done with design, and then you're doing all of the things all at once. So we're going to timebox, and we started with a 3-month cadence. Okay. Because teams were new to Agile, they were adjusting, so we did a review every 3 months to make sure that they were on track, and then as teams got it, then we moved them to a 6-month cadence. And basically I'd say at least 90% of our programs were on a 6-month cadence at the time that I left, because they got it, they knew what they were doing, they could deliver. And at that 6-month cadence, we'd have a discussion of what do you think you're going to deliver over the next 6 months? But we're not going to hold you to it because we know things are going to change.
Right.
And so then you talk about what we expected to deliver, what we actually delivered, and that was okay. That they weren't the same.
Yeah. But coming back to the Scrum Master role.
Yes.
During this journey in the federal government, how did that role evolve in your teams? Where did the Scrum Masters come from, and where did they go, or are they
So we had a lot of, particularly on the federal side, we had a lot of people who envisioned Scrum Master as, oh, I'm just renaming the project manager.
Oh, okay.
Into the and we had to, I will say, disabuse them of that notion, and say, look, we expect more out of we expect you to actually be a Scrum Master, to understand the Agile methodology, to be able to train it, to be able to work with the team. Because if you, and this is my other argument on the technical side, is part of being a Scrum Master means that you're mentoring the team. If you can't actually step in and mentor the team, you can't fulfill the role very well. And it's not just mentor them on process, but actually mentoring them on other pieces as well. So it started very much as an evolution from, oh, see, we'll just bring in traditional. No, that isn't going to work. We're not going to accept that as the Scrum Master role. So we helped to evolve it by setting expectations, really. Of this is what we expect our Scrum Masters to do. There was a brief period when we were going to have more federal Scrum Masters, helping with the contractors. And we went through an evaluation and basically realized that we didn't have the skills on the federal employee side to actually have enough to be Scrum Masters across the teams. Yeah, this isn't going to work. We do need the contractors to provide this, but we want them to provide it in this way. And but it definitely was an evolution from we're just renaming the PM, which kind of was where it started, to no, we need the people who actually, getting your CSM does not make you a Scrum Master. So that was a lot of that that's nice that you have that certification. I have it too, and 90% of okay, you went and took a class. And at least so when I got my certification, it was a pass test. It's not a pass-fail test. But, we're like, well, we need evidence that you can actually do it, and not just you have a certification. So,
where do you think this role is headed? What's the future of this? That's the sort of the essence of what I'm trying to figure out.
So, in my view, there are. So where does the role go in general versus where does it go on a specific team? And I'll answer the specific team first, in my opinion.
Okay.
On a specific team, if a Scrum Master has been doing their job well, then they work themselves out of a job. Because the team gets it, the team starts to move into high performing. So I'm also an Agile coach, and I believe the same is true of Agile coaches. If I'm doing my job well, I will work myself out of a job within a couple of years at the outside. If I'm not doing my job well, then in a couple of years you should hire someone else who's working themselves out of a job because I haven't done it. But I believe the same should be true of Scrum Masters, particularly on individual teams, which is that you get them to the point where they've evolved, where they're running their things basically on their own, and then you need to provide occasional insight and occasional things. And for some teams, they evolve to the point that role is not needed anymore. But I will also say that I think that there is space for that role in the industry, in teams, etc. As they get stood up, as you have new things forming, and then as you get larger, there is a need for that role. And I'm not necessarily sure that it will always be called a Scrum Master because that is very Scrum specific. But that role of facilitator and like facilitator and mentor and teacher and holder of the agile truth for that group, that there is a need for that kind of a role to exist. And that's why I say a Scrum Master as a person is going to work themselves out of that role, but will still exist on the team.
Yeah.
As you go out beyond just having one team doing work, as you have multiple teams doing work, as you have, for a company, or you have a brand new team, or you have those kinds of situations, I think the role of Scrum Master, the role of that facilitator, Scrum Master type role, is very important to maintain a consistency across the organization. So I think that the Scrum Master role becomes important from the view of a larger organization for saying this is how we do Agile here.
Okay.
Whether it's Scrum, whether it's Safe, whether it's Lean Kanban, whether it's less, whatever it is, but you have that person who's going to help maintain consistency across the organization. But that's so that's kind of where I think that role, in my opinion, where it should evolve to over time. But
did you use any of the scaling frameworks at the federal government?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So at Citizenship and Immigration Services, let's see, I started over 4 years ago there when I was working there. And so the scaling frameworks weren't really mature enough yet.
Right.
And so we built our own. Maybe I should have packaged it. But we took the things that worked, the things that were best, the things that. So sure, there might be little pieces that look kind of like Safe, and little pieces that look like scaled Scrum, and little pieces that are not at all like anything that anyone else is doing.
Right.
But we took out of different places things that worked for us. We're in the last year or so, we started to do impact mapping a lot more, which, that isn't necessarily something that is a part of a framework. We're not at CIS. We weren't at CIS for a while. We were kind of anti-safe. They're no longer anti-safe.
Okay.
But that is partly because safe has evolved.
Yeah.
In addition to better discussions of safe is not a you must do this. It's a hey, here's ideas and but given that we have a system that works, or CIS has a system that works, it's not like we're going to pull some predefined framework in. But I know that some of the other government agencies that aren't as far evolved are definitely looking at safe less. Maybe a little bit at DAD, but mostly it's Safe and less that they're looking at hey, we need a framework that we can pull in that we can use as a guideline for how to push forward.
Do you feel like if you think about like from an individual standpoint, like a Scrum Master, they are looking at these scaling frameworks and saying, that's where I want to go next. Sort of, I want to be a RTE, I want to be a release train engineer, I want to be a value stream engineer. Have you seen that in Scrum Masters, that tendency?
In some, in others, I've seen very much I'm very happy where I am. And I've also seen. So I think there are at least three. There are several paths out of where Scrum Master has evolved to, and one of which is coach. And I've seen a lot of people moving into the coaching kind of role, and there have even been some Scrum Masters I've suggested that they might want to consider it, and some of them have said, yeah, that might be cool. And others have said, no way. I don't want to do that. I'm very happy being a Scrum Master and dealing with a team, or maybe two teams, but no more than two teams. And I don't want to be a release train engineer or a coach or anything else. I am happy dealing with these teams and seeing the growth and the changes that I can affect here. So, it's for me. I look at I look at where those skills are best applied, and I see people who are focused in one direction or another, kind of leaning, to become coach or to become a release train engineer or to become more of an architect out of the Scrum Master role. Say, hey, I've got all the technical and I've got some other pieces. Let me frame it in this different way. And
you got the facilitation skills. You got the big picture.
Yep.
You have some depth in technology, and you understand how the pieces fit together. That's a good role for a solution architect.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's cool. Great. Is there anything that we haven't spoken about in the Scrum Master role that you want to talk about?
Not necessarily. Not that I can think of off the top of my head. No.
Cool. Jumping to the startup world.
Yes.
In the startup world, first it's so different now. There there is so much value in that Scrum Master playing multiple roles. In the startup, people play multiple roles all the time.
Yep.
So in that space, that's so relevant. But
yes.
if I've seen many Scrum Masters who started their career as either some sort of technical line, then they got into maybe project management, they became Scrum Masters, or that kind of path, and they lost touch with technology to some extent. If these folks want to get back into sort of what we are trying to envision, the role,
yes.
Should they brush up on technology? Should they go take classes? Should they what advice would you give them?
The advice that I would give them is go spin up an Amazon server and play. And I know that may sound silly, but I'm very serious. I mean, you can go do the trial service at Amazon, and it's not that you need to be the best at any of them, but go spin up an Amazon server and see what's possible, and see what you can make happen. One of the things that so yes, I didn't do Java development, and some of the stuff I did was on the mainframe and etc. But when I got married a couple of years ago, I was like, let me go out and make a Drupal site because for our wedding website, rather than because I need to be let's see, I need to host it, I need to do this, I need to do this, and so making sure to not be 100% in technology all the time because you can't, and particularly as I was division chief, and I can't be in it all the time. Although our CIO was, he would sling code as the CIO. So it's that expectation then of, well, if the CIO is offering to pair program with people, there's no reason why everyone between that CIO and the developer shouldn't have at least some modicum of technical proficiency.
Correct. That is so true. That's so true. And the last question was, how do you measure success of your Scrum Masters?
I don't.
You don't?
No. So fundamentally, Scrum Master is part of the team, and I measure the success of the team. If I try and measure the success of the Scrum Master or the lead developer or an intern, then I lose that team focus. And so I much prefer to measure the success of the team and attribute the success across that team rather than trying to say, the Scrum Master, ran a retrospective every 2 weeks and made sure daily stand-up happened, and they made sure that sprint planning happened, and we still didn't deliver on time. Well, so the Scrum Master did all their stuff right, so it's the team's fault. I'm like, no. The Scrum Master is part of the team. They're either successful or they're not.
That's true.
I try and measure the success of the team, and honestly, I try and measure the success of the team as much as possible in business metrics, not in code metrics, not in deployment metrics.
That's true.
Are we meeting the business need or not? If we are, awesome, you're a great team. If we're not, where's the missing piece? Is it because we have pieces missing in the Scrum Master? Is it we need to help the product owner who's part of this team to prioritize better? Is it that we have code issues and we need to do better there? Great, let's fix the problem. But I'm not going to point out each of those as individual pieces.
That's true. Deliver what you have to deliver. That's the success.
That's the success.
That's
Yes.
success. You know. Great. Thank you so much. Any questions for me, Joshua?
So you're doing this research. When are you planning on having it out?
My original plan is September.
Okay.
Yeah. But I live in Minnesota, so summer came and I took a little bit of a break. But I think I'm still on track.
Okay.
So to date I have about 200 survey responses.
Awesome.
And I've spoken to more than 30 folks like this.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get perspective from all sides: CIO, team members, Scrum Masters, of course, Agile coaches, PMO managers. It's kind of getting everyone's perspective to where
Very
it's
cool.
going to go.
Very cool. I'd be very interested to see what your conclusions are after this.
I'll definitely. You're on the list. You'll get a when I do the report. You'll definitely get a copy.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on the call and talking about Scrum Master and your other ventures. And good luck with your startup.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And good luck with finishing your research.
Thank you.